Welcome into the PHLY Phillies podcast. I am Jamie Lynch with Renee Washington and Tyler Zulli, as always. And no, Starbucks, it is not the holiday season yet.
It is November 2nd. You are allowed to have the merry holiday.
No.
That's and there's no trees or anything. That's a generic holiday cup.
Yeah, because, woke culture tried to cancel them for having a Christmas cup or something a couple of years ago. You remember that whole story?
Yes.
Yeah, God forbid.
I mean, technically you could still have more fall colors, but
no. This is just glossing over Thanksgiving. I didn't even notice it until I got in, and Vince said something about, the holiday cup, and I was like, it just hit me as I sat down. I was like, it's not even Thanksgiving yet.
It's November 2nd.
Have a November cup of lots of gourds. You can have a bunch of gourds.
November in general, there's nothing specific for November holidays except for fall themed stuff, turkeys. But that's not flashy to have on the cup.
This is winter. It is
I guess it could be leaves or something.
Winter.
I'm one of those people that absolutely feels like as soon as we're done Halloween, it's the holiday season. And part of the holiday season is more like Christmas, depending on what you celebrate, Hanukkah, Kwanzaa, Thanksgiving, it's all together. New Year's, it's not glossed over. It's included as a
Starbucks just told me that
month-long thing.
Thanksgiving does not exist.
Because
we're already on to Christmas.
For many people, Thanksgiving decorations are also their Christmas decorations. And I have family members that are like that, and I may or may not be like that a little bit too. So welcome in AJ Jones, Christy. Yes,
Hello.
we're feeling good. We're talking about the fact that it's officially the holiday season.
Yeah, MLB free agency hasn't even started yet, and Starbucks is trying to tell me that it's Christmas time already.
Veterans Day. Yeah, there's so many holidays coming up.
Yeah, lots to get into today. One of those does include the holiday that just passed, which is our candy tier rankings. And because when my kids went to bed last night, I dove into their candy bowl and watched a little World Series. So we're going to talk about the World Series. We're going to talk about some candy. We are going to grade the outfielders today. I want to tie a nice bow on the Craig Kimbrel conversation yesterday, which I thought was a fascinating one because the range of grades given to Craig Kimbrel were all over the place. I'm interested to get into the Kyle Schwarber grading today because I still don't understand him. I may never, and that's okay, but we'll get into him. I'm curious where people grade him. So lots to get into, but let's start with baseball officially being over.
Okay, wait. I actually am not upset that it's over.
I'm happy the World Series is over.
Yeah, I'm glad the World Series is over because it, without a doubt, was very frustrating watching Texas beat up on the Diamondbacks, knowing that the Phillies should have been the ones battling it out with the Rangers. And so now that it's over, it's good. Everybody's teams are done. It's not just the Phillies that are done. Everybody is done. Everybody is now in the same boat and talking off season. So happy for that part. But it is weird and sad that as we're talking today about the Texas Rangers having their first official, technically franchise World Series since moving over from Washington, that we should be talking about the Phillies winning World Series. We should be planning to go down for the parade and what we're doing. But instead, we're talking about how the Rangers won in 5 and beat the Diamondbacks and all the blah, blah things from that.
Yeah, well, let me just say this. I fully understand what I'm about to say is a complete loser's attitude and a loser's point of view and stance, but I'm going to say it anyway. I fully believe the Phillies would have given the Texas Rangers a much better series.
Yeah.
The Arizona Diamondbacks, in games 6 and 7, I still can't believe the Phillies fucking choked on that. They were the better team than the Phillies. There's no other way to put it. But do I believe the Arizona Diamondbacks are a better team than the Phillies? No, not at all. And I still don't. And I think the Texas Rangers just proved that. And I know I sound like a loser, but it is what it is. I think the Phillies give the Rangers a 6 or 7 game series and maybe even beat them.
Yeah.
With the way Eovaldi pitched and Montgomery, they're a really good team. They won 11 consecutive road games That is deserved. I'm not trying to take anything away from Texas. They are very deserving of having the title. When you win 11 straight road games, you deserve your World Series title. But my loser's attitude is the Phillies give them a much better series.
Yeah, and congrats, I guess. Congrats to Texas for making also history. They had the worst losing record last season. Compared to all teams that ever won a World Series after having a losing record, Texas had the worst last year to then a turnaround to winning the World Series this year. As you mentioned, those 11 straight road victories. Also, of course, first franchise history as the Rangers, as the Texas Rangers. Corey Seager made history being named MVP for the fourth time ever in Major League Baseball history for World Series MVP awards. He joins Hall of Famers in Sandy Koufax, Bob Gibson, and Reggie Jackson as players that were able to win multiple World Series MVP titles. And Corey, along with Reggie, were the only ones that did it with two different teams. So it's some accomplishments, even, of course, without having Garcia, they still were able to win. But it is frustrating because it's a winnable series. I know I've been talking about that ever since the Phillies got knocked out. But what makes it the most frustrating is not only was the NLCS a winnable series that they should have advanced past, but also the World Series. When you look at Texas, that's a series that the Phillies could have won had they been there. So
yeah, I think
very frustrating,
so.
without a doubt, because it's one of those that you let slide. And we know in sports you don't often get those years. There's a lot of times where there's a team that's a favorite and a dominant team. There's, an injury-plagued season. This was a year that the Phillies had a lot going for them until they didn't. Until they decided to hit a wall and lose in the NLCS. So that to me is what's most frustrating about all of this.
Ooh, MBD chose violence this morning, and he's absolutely right. He says, Nathan Eovaldi, 2-year, $34 million deal. Taijuan Walker, 4 years, $72 million. Looking at you, Dombrowski. MBD, that hurts. I didn't even realize Eovaldi was on that type of deal. That's very painful because he was lights out for the Rangers this postseason, and Taijuan Walker didn't even pitch. So that one really hurts. Christy S. says, her son, they do a family spring training trip every year. They saw the Rangers play, and her son said to her, the Rangers are going to be good, Mom.
Oh, your son was very correct, Christy.
Yeah, and I saw a gross meme
Absolutely.
today of Jacob deGrom and Max Scherzer sitting in their Mets dugout talking animatedly, and it said, "Why don't we just get out of here and go to Texas and win a World Series?" And I went, "Ew." Like, ew.
They've got some unique storylines. Bruce, of course, coming out of unretirement.
Yeah.
It's
one of the greatest managers ever.
Honestly, without a doubt. But it's definitely frustrating because, as we know, it's one of those things where good for them, but not good for them. It should be the Phillies. But I know you guys were talking about, for anybody that missed yesterday, we did go through and give grades for the bullpen. The day before was the infield. The day before that, our first day on Monday, we were giving out grades for the starting pitchers. Christy, if you missed it, as MBDBDBF filled you in on, a lot of Ds that were handed out. And today we've got to also get into grading now the outfield. And I don't know that we're going to have as many Ds here, but it should be better. What's not better is Eugene Krabs. You're continuing to come right in with it. I like your entrance. I felt like you just blew the doors open. Hide your wives, hide your girlfriends, hide your mistresses. The pervert is here, Eugene Krabs has announced in the chat. It just felt like you just blew things open. So I feel like it's time for us to blow things open a little bit because, Jamie, I don't want to talk about the World Series anymore. It was not fun to watch. It was not fun baseball. It was very boring games. And
well, yeah, it's because the Diamondbacks are frauds. I mean, I sound like a loser, and I'm a fan of a loser organization that's saying that, but that's okay. I'm still going to say it. They were kind of frauds. They have some really good young players, and Perdomo and Ketel Marte. And, Gurriel is going to be a free agent. You don't really need outfielders per se. So he's probably not going to be on the Phillies' radar, but it'll be interesting to see if the Diamondbacks bring him back. Yeah. And Monday does mark the start of free agency. MLB free agency fires up 5 days after the World Series concludes. So it looks like this Monday we can start diving into the Phillies free agents, potential free agents, salary, and officially close the chapter on 2023 and look ahead to adding to this team because the Phillies are going to be a really good team still. MBD says, I didn't give the Rangers enough credit. They were the #1 team in the AL in the regular season, team on base and team fielding percentage. Yeah, they spent a lot of money. And, The Garcia is just like one of the all-time like steals of a fine.
my
The
gosh,
Cardinals
yeah.
basically just DFA'd him, and they went, yeah, we'll take him, and he becomes the ALCS MVP. Gets a little hurt in the, in the World Series there, but what a fine that was. And then Seager, and the money they spent up the middle there, and defense is important, and that's one of the areas I'd love to see the Phillies improve.
Yep.
I don't know where that comes from outside of just Trey Turner not being a sieve at shortstop. That's the easiest way to improve the team defense.
Yeah. Well, as you talk about defense, I mean, you even look at the game last night. I mean, 6 innings where it was 0-0, and it was in a run scored in the 7th and 4 in the 9th that were the difference for the Texas Rangers to win. It's as much as we talk about the at-bats needing to be better, obviously the defensive side of the game just as important when you talk about winning championships. So, yeah, there's definitely some areas. I know we were able to get into the infield 2 days ago, excuse me. There's definitely some areas that need to be adjusted, which is why talking about grades for the outfield today, Jamie, I don't think I'm as
well, first I want to rip the
on.
Arizona Diamondback fan base a little bit more before we get to the grades.
Okay, let's keep it going. Rip away.
Yes. That stadium sucks. I hated watching it on MLB. But two observations from last night. The loser Diamondback organization had to send security out to defend the pool.
Yeah, that's
are you
a lot.
joking me?
That's a lot.
Just like, we can't have anybody dive in our pool. Why? It's probably half pee anyway. Just let the Rangers dive in it if they want to dive in it. Like, come on, get over yourselves.
Well, I mean, what's next? Are you going to have a roped off area that a team has to celebrate if they win? Like, is that the next thing? Because it's the same thing. If you are saying they can't go in the pool, all right, next you're going to say, you can only stay at this corner of the field because we don't want you over here. So it's just too much. And it's a loser thing because your team's about to get closed out. The World Series is about to be over. You put security there because the series is over. And it just it's silly. That's what you're allocating your funds and resources towards. And
nerds.
It's just too much. It's too nerds. If you had more of your own fans there, you wouldn't have some of these issues.
And the other one is I might have missed this picked up by MLB Network and ESPN and all the national outlets, but the game had to be paused again the other night because Diamondbacks fans were throwing paper airplanes on the field. And it got so bad the PA announcer had to come on and tell the fans to stop doing it, and they immediately booed the PA announcer.
Classy, guys. Real classy.
Must be all the Philadelphia expats out there that decided to throw all the paper airplanes on the field.
It just is
Notice how this happens everywhere else but Philadelphia?
Notice how it
we get
also
streakers,
is, how it's also,
everybody does.
Yeah, that's common. That's like a normal thing for sports. But you also notice how you have to dig for these stories. Unless you're watching the game, of course, or you're there. You don't hear about it. Had this been a Philly game of any sport, it's all over the place. There's going to be people that are running with it, just like they run with John. I'm so tired of hearing these non-Philly outlets that are covering the area and will have these questions about John. It's like the things that people get stuck on with the Phillies, with Philly sports in general, is the fans being crazy. Yet paper airplanes, you guys actually
grow up.
How does that even? Okay, I have a serious question though. How did you guys decide this? I mean, paper airplanes require you to have paper. It's not like you're just throwing out there your food and stuff.
Maybe you can you're make taking them out time. Of the little hot dog paper trays.
I mean, that's to me. It's you organized it.
That or you snuck in
that's
paper.
a good amount. I mean, it's a good amount of paper airplanes. That's not something that's like, here, I've got some paper, Jamie. Let's put together some airplanes and toss them out there. That to me, that's like
premeditation nerdom.
You get the towels at the game. Are you getting paper for your paper airplanes? So how did that come about? Did you guys coordinate this? Was this something you sat in your Scottsdale, bars planning of let's go launch some paper airplanes? It just doesn't really make sense, to be honest.
So I just wanted to point that out because you're not going to hear it anywhere else from the national media.
No,
it's just
and we want to remind you.
Atlanta and Phoenix,
haven't heard anything since.
They throw stuff on the field and it never seems to get mentioned or brought up again. Martian Lynch says, we have pole climbers, and I don't just mean charity. Yes, we do. We also had a horse poop eater at an Eagles parade.
That makes me literally want to vomit. It's disgusting.
It's not.
And vomit has actually been a thing that's been an issue too, of somebody vomiting on a man and his daughter. So yeah, there's definitely been a lot of gross. But also, I don't know
if kid died. Pukemon died.
Pukemon,
the kid that puked on the kid.
He died.
Yeah.
Like recently.
A couple years ago. Yeah.
And was that something that they announced at the Pokemon?
No,
like the headline was
I just know that
Kitty
fact,
pukes
so
on the game at the game
I
died.
just threw it out.
You know how like when major news happens, they always lead with like whatever brought you to fame. And not that this is a funny thing at all because his poor family, but that's interesting. How did you find? Okay,
the amount of useless information in my brain far exceeds like useful information. Wow. So the fact we talk about that kid, I go, oh yeah, Pokemon, he's dead. Well, anyway, moving on.
My last thing on it is I don't know if it's that Philly sports fans are just crazy or if we just it's the other stories you just don't hear about. Paper airplanes, you don't hear about, unless you're us and we're actually talking about it, it just gets swept under the rug. So maybe it's not us, it's them.
I always thought that was a good nickname, Pokemon, even though it was a horrible act.
It's very horrible. Very horrible.
Moving on. Let's give a little love to the chat because I think our boys MBD and Spiral Out just became best friends.
They did. And they're planning a sleepover. It's giving stepbrothers.
They're going to move the bunk beds together so there's more room for activities. I don't
know how you got there.
MBD lives in Florida and Spiral Out, we met at the Phillies tailgate. They just realized they're both huge Tool fans. Tyler, are you a Tool guy? Do we have 3 for 3 here? Are you joining their wolf pack?
I respect both MBD and Spiral Out.
I thought Tool would be in your wheelhouse.
So it's not.
I don't even know Tool.
It's not Tool.
Okay.
I have no issue with Tool the music.
Oh.
I'm sorry. This is why.
It's okay.
This is why
I thought it was right in your wheelhouse.
This is why I put the disclaimer in place. There's a lot of Tool fans who are, for lack of a better word, tools.
I always appreciated their penis shirt. It was like the wrench with the penis.
Bad, and this is like anything. Like most fans are good. Bad Tool fans are like holier than thou. Like our band is better than your band.
Oh, I can't stand people like that.
So I don't have any issue with Tool. It's the fan base that drives me away from the band.
Okay, fair enough.
Valid. So you're not going to jump in on the bunk bed, pushing your beds together.
Listen, I'm sure if they're Tool fans, I'm sure that we can find commonality somewhere else in the music world.
Yeah.
But it's just not with that band.
Well, MVD is going to host us all in Florida and take us out on his boat one day. And if he wants to play Tool while we do that, that's fine with me.
His boat, he can do whatever he wants.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, sure.
So let's get to the grading. Now, yesterday we ended the show with, I thought was a pretty good discussion on Craig Kimbrel. Did I end up being the highest grader at a C+?
No, Phil was a B+.
Phil was a B+, and you were a D+?
A D+, not being.
And you and Tyler.
Honestly, he could have got an F.
And what were you, Tyler?
D or D+.
Okay.
Yeah, you were also D+. Good. We were the same.
So we went from teetering on F all the way up to a B+ with a C+ thrown in there. So wide range. It's an interesting thing when somebody is really, really good for you for like 3 or 4 months, but then when August comes around, starts leaking oil, and how people grade it, I always go, all right, are you grading this on recency bias? Are you discounting the 3 months of really good? So I always like to see how people grade a situation like that because I put more of the blame on Rob Thompson there when it came to the playoffs. I thought he needed to know Craig was cooked. That's why I went C+ just to kind of not forget about, the good. And there was good. And a lot of these players sucked in that series versus Arizona. The last 3 games, Bryson, Nick, Trey, they all sucked. And it's part of the reason why we're talking about the MLB offseason. I saw Alex Coffey had a piece today that where she talked to a lot of different like fan groups and some nuns, some teachers, like all these people around. And I didn't read the story yet, but the general synopsis I got from, the slug, as they call it, was that this one hurts still a lot for most people because there was like an emotional attachment to this team.
Yeah.
And it does suck that the guys you loved came up small in the biggest time, and we have to live with that all off season now.
Yeah, and
womp womp.
I apologize for my coughing, but I'm just choking over here because that's what Craig did, and so I think
Rob
for me,
did.
And Rob did as well. Look, I fully agree that Craig is not the lone person to blame. He did not put himself into the game. That was Rob, and I don't like the fact Rob did it. And Rob's gonna get some heat for sure when we're giving out grades tomorrow on our show here for the
front office manager.
Yeah, because the management of the team was also an issue. Rob, I'm looking at you. But my issue with Craig, and when I grade on my rubric of Professor Washington, I'm going to make myself a professor and you're Miss Honey. It's the fact that the postseason has a higher weight. It's like, remember in school, there were some papers and projects and assignments that were weighted heavier than others. And what's up, Big Mike, Mickey D? There are some projects, there's some assignments that have a higher percentage that they weigh towards your final grade. The postseason, in my opinion, is like 60% of the grade. I'm just throwing that number out there, but it's a higher percentage because it doesn't matter what you do in the regular season if you go into the postseason and you don't show up. And for Craig to be so bad in the postseason, specifically the NLCS, back-to-back days, agreed, shouldn't have been out there for Game 4. It's just I cannot give you anything higher than a D+. If anything, I would love to have given an F, but I don't want to give out Fs because I feel like failure to me is like, you go out there on the field and you're just sitting pretzel style. Like the fact that it's kind of like you sign your name, you get an automatic X amount of points. Like for sports, you show up, you're out there, you're standing, you're moving, you get at least a D-. So for Craig, that's the only thing that kept him from getting an F+. He showed up, he signed his name, but but I cannot.
He could have been the team's MVP for 3 months of the season. It could have,
and that's what makes it even worse. You had an MVP start to the season, all-star start to the season, and then in the postseason, where he was easily the worst. Was there anybody worse than him? I mean, in a major moment.
Yeah, I mean, I would make the case that Trey, Bryce, and Nick in that Arizona series were all fairly useless.
Useless as well,
and had more opportunities to contribute or hurt than Craig did. So,
which is why I also knocked their grades down. But for Craig, this is what you do. This is your job, and you are not able to.
But the manager has to know when he's not capable of doing it, and I think that's my biggest issue. And
then it goes back to the fact that not only is it an overuse issue, it's an issue of you have the stubbornness to not want to check runners on base, not caring about the pitch clock. Now you see Corbin Carroll and the Diamondbacks stealing bases, and those stolen bases led to runs. So it's not even, I actually would semi be okay with him just struggling in terms of pitching because he has been overused, as you say. But then you add in the other factors, the stolen bases, which literally led to a run. What was that? The third run that they I don't even know. It was a game-changing run. I want to say it was the third run that Arizona scored. And it's because Craig Kimbrel can't have the awareness to just look. So that's my issue. The problems that he had that we talked about on the show were the exact same problems that came back to bite Craig. And I could not give him anything higher than a D+. But hopefully today we're being more generous, Jamie.
Well, I think there's a lot better grades to dull out here in the outfield. So let's get it started. Did we say we're starting with Mr. Nicholas or Jake Cave, who I always call Nick Cave, the Australian recording artist? And I hope I don't have to have this problem ever again because I would like a upgrade over Jake Cave personally. Fine. He's a guy that filled in at first base for you in a couple emergency spots. He'd never done that in his career before, and he was fine. Not a lot of pop as your top bench bat. And look, Greg Dobbs was a top bench bat when you went on a championship run. I'm not saying you need a home run guy, but I typically like a little bit more gap and power out of my top bench bat. Clearly, you're not going to get a 15 to 20 home run guy off the bench, but a guy that can go 7 to 12 home runs. What did Cave end up with, Tyler? 5 off the top of my head? 5
home runs.
Yeah. Fine. I gave him a C+ just because that's average, kind of if WAR was translated into grades, Tyler, would C+ be like a 0 WAR? Middle of the pack?
Yeah, I guess C would probably be a 0, right?
Yeah.
Anything worse is going to be a borderline failing grade.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I would think so.
So that's kind of my thinking was he's just average as shit.
And that's what you guys are saying in the chat. You're saying JK's a waste of a roster spot, Christy. His grade, according to Mark, and welcome Mark, is who cares? Eugene Krabs is saying Jake from State Farm could have done better at the plate.
I care because bench players are important. And when you're going to Jake Cave to end the season as the last at bat, that's on Dave Dombrowski. I think he's got to upgrade that position. Like Jake Cave was just fine, but I care. I want my top bench player to be something a little more dangerous than Jake Cave. Like, ugh.
So I think I graded him too high, to be honest, and actually had a Miss Honey moment because I think
What did you do?
Should have been lower. As I'm thinking it out in my head,
I didn't
when you
see
talk
either
about
of your guys' grades today.
Good. As I think about him as a pinch hitter specifically, you come in, you get one hit. He's not a good pinch hitter, but he shouldn't be the pinch hitter also. But this season, you talk about 5 home runs. He 21 RBIs, 212 batting average. I gave him a C, and actually that's extremely generous because I'm actually thinking he's maybe more of a C- D+ because he was not a factor. The reason I originally gave him a C was he wasn't a guy that cost you games, but he didn't help win games either.
Sure.
But when you think about him as a pinch hitter specifically, your role is to come in and help get hits, and you're unable to do that. You're not able to do your job. That's what we bring you in here for, and you couldn't do it. So that makes me want to drop him, but I'm going to still stick with my C because C for Cave.
All right, before we get to Tyler, people in the chat, drop your grades as we go along because we love to see what you're thinking on this as well. Like Big Mike D said, he was Schwarber-esque in the outfield with no pop, D-.
Good clubhouse guy.
Christy says Jake Cave is a waste of a roster spot. Eugene Kraft says bring back Matt Stairs. Spiral Out says everybody on the bench was a waste. Cave was a waste. Stubbs was a waste. Pache, meh.
They all were a waste.
Meh. So Tyler, what was your Jake Cave grade?
Yeah, so I'm going to give Jake Cave a C+ as well.
Yeah, you're right there.
And the reason I think that it's probably, I was actually teetering on B-, and the reason that I was teetering on B- is not statistically driven. It was because the Jake Cave was mismanaged this season, quite frankly. I thought Rob Thompson went to Jake Cave too frequently, especially like in weird situations where you thought, okay, well, here's the lineup and here's what I expect, and Bohm's going to play first and Sosa's going to play third. This was pre-Harper coming back. And you would look at the day game lineup and it would be like Jake Cave batting 8th, playing first base. And you would go, this guy's never played first base in his career, in his life. And he started 17 games at the position in 2023. I don't think he was a detriment to the bench the way that I think a lot of our commenters are making him out to be. He wasn't productive. I'm not going to sit here and tell you he was great, but I don't think that he was nearly as bad as many want to point him out to be. I think that Jake Cave on a roster as your third bench piece is not
second or third
bad.
I'm even cool with.
I think that the issue that I have with Jake Cave more than anything was the fact that at the beginning of the year, I desperately wanted the bench bat to be Jesus Aguilar. And the the A's ended up signing Aguilar for very little money, and he wasn't very good this year. So I guess it ends up being a wash. But the reason that I wanted Aguilar was because he could play first with Hoskins not available and Harper not available yet either. And the fact that he had pop in his bat, and they don't have anybody off the bench that can come in and truly hit a home run. Both of those guys ended up this season hitting 5 home runs. Yeah. So it ends up being a wash. So I give the guy a C+ for
That's what I feel like.
He's just
for
fine.
me, I always also judge their mistakes and errors on when it happened. And Jake Cave wasn't a guy that, like I said, he didn't cost you games. It wasn't, the timing of it wasn't something that was a detriment. It just was, it could have been better. You would have liked it to be someone else. But yeah, I agree with both of you guys. I know someone, Big Mike Mickey D said, see as in see your way out of here. Yeah, his batting average, home run, RBI were all in line with previous 2 seasons. Ultimately, he was who we thought he was.
Yeah, well, I just want an upgrade.
That's a good point,
there.
Mark. Yeah,
I want an
great
upgrade.
point.
I think a bench play, like your top bench player,
Can't be him.
Well, it's just undervalued. Like especially if you're a team dealing with injuries, like that guy's gonna contribute a lot. In 65 games, Christy says 64 too many. Like, I think it's an important piece. It's a hard piece to fill. I'm not saying it's easy, but I would like to see an upgrade as we're entering free agency next week. We'll see what happens there. Moving on to the next outfielder. Did we say we're going Pache next?
Rojas.
We're going Johan. Either way, let's go.
I'm sorry.
Let's go. We'll just go Rojas. You want to kick us off here, Renee, with Johan?
Yeah, I mean, we were going Pache first, but yeah, let's go with Yo-Yo.
He's got a nickname now.
Yeah, actually, could be Yo-Ro, could be Yo-Yo. There's options here. It's
I
whatever,
didn't know that.
I'm making it a thing.
You're workshopping it here.
I'm working on it, guys. It's Yo-Yo. It's not Johan, it's Yo-Yo. All right, so Johan to me is an interesting one.
Yo-Ro?
Obviously, Yo-Ro. Yeah, Yo-Yo.
Yo-Ro better than Yo-Yo.
You like Yo-Ro better than Yo-Yo?
Yeah, but I don't think either's going to take off.
Well, thanks, Jamie. Yo-Ro it is then.
We can try.
We're going to stick it. It's going to stick. It's going to stick.
Yeah.
All right. Yo-Ro, a gold glove caliber type of center, gets pulled up. I think for how he was added into the majors from AA, when the timing of it in mid-July, not able to have, he had a decent amount of obviously regular season experience, but being put into a tough postseason role, not fully his fault. Again, think it was a management issue there as well. I, in my opinion, feel like Rojas is a C+. I think he's a little bit above average because of the at-bats. If we were like splitting his grade down to how he contributes as a center fielder, obviously a totally different story. But I think overall, big picture, Yo-Ro is someone that I think has a lot of potential. He's a little bit above average because he can give you more than the average Jake Cave type of a player. You know you're going to get something from him. He can make a big play. He's so fast, covers ground well. So I say a C+ because there's a lot of room for improvement. To me, if you're in the C area, you've got a lot of room for growth and progress. And coming into the team having a 306 batting, 20 doubles, 5 triples, 9 homers, 45 RBIs, he needs to make sure it's translating into the majors. I know we talked about him possibly going back.
I think he's starting the year in the minors.
Yeah, starting back in the minors. I think that's a great decision because he's a C+, in my opinion, that has a lot of upswing if he can get some better at-bats to being, without a doubt, definitely a gold glove caliber player, but also on the at-bat side if he can contribute more.
Yeah,
Yo-Ro.
He's got to get better offensively with his approach. Way too many 3 and 4 pitch at-bats with strikeouts. But defensively, I mean, this kid is special. And defense is big. If you saw the play, who's the left fielder I'm blanking on the name for the Rangers last night, made a really nice play, kind of a run-saving play. He's
Carter,
yeah. Defense shows its head time and time again. And I think it was Night Train earlier said when we were talking about bench players, he said bench players in modern MLB are more defensive replacements than they are offensive. Yeah, so like at worst, this kid is, a future defensive replacement. I think he's going to break all the defensive metrics for center fielders in baseball. I think this kid can be a 3 or 4 WAR player just based on his defense alone. He's got to get a competent bat for you to make him an everyday player.
Yeah.
So I gave him a B+, and I gave him the B+ because I expected him to come up and be here for 2 or 3 weeks, and he kind of played himself into the everyday center fielder for you in a way. Now, you didn't have other great options. Pache got hurt, and then Rojas had kind of stolen the job by the time Pache got back. Brandon Marsh had then taken over left by the time Harper was back. So, I mean, steal the job might be a little strong of a word there, but his defense alone, I'm sure made every pitcher on that mound more comfortable. So, because I only expected him to see him for 2 or 3 weeks as that injury kind of replacement, I gave him a B+, while acknowledging his offense needs a complete makeover. So, it might be a little generous. I probably would have felt a little better giving him a B, but it's too late. The graphic was made.
Well,
but, I think the defense alone gives you that.
That's a good point. I mean, he did exceed expectation because you weren't sure how long he was going to be in the majors. Can you just scroll up a little bit, Tyler? Big Mike D was agreeing with you, saying also a B+.
Yeah.
He hit decent during the year, but was obviously overmatched in the playoffs. Agreed. He was overmatched in the playoffs, but it wasn't a surprise. I think we all expected that from Yo-Ro. There it is. Come postseason, that he would be someone that wouldn't be able to contribute. And honestly, when I look at the Braves series specifically, I remember Yo-Ro, I'm just going to keep saying it because it's going to stick. Yo-Ro did surprise, and he helped score runs. So I think it was just really the NLCS that was extremely eye-opening because he was put in major situations, like bases loaded, 4th inning. But it shouldn't have been him in that situation.
If every other superstar, high-paid caliber player, yada, yada, was struggling, then it's completely fair to expect Rojas to struggle because the Diamondbacks adjusted and the Phillies weren't able to adjust back. They started throwing dog bleep at the Phillies, and the Phillies couldn't lay off of it because they're an aggressive team.
Yeah.
Tyler, what do you got?
Yeah, Gretchen, I'm gonna need you to stop trying to make fetch happen. This Yoro thing ain't happening.
It's Yoro. Yoro. Like YOLO.
Rojas did have the big triple, Martian. That was
Yeah,
huge.
that's why it's
That was
C+.
his only offensive contribution.
I genuinely went into like a college GPA calculator to get my grade on this one because like
It's a tough one.
It's such a stark difference between the defense and the offense. The defense is an A. I mean, it's an A plus.
No
doubt about it.
I couldn't go A plus on this calculator, so I'm giving him an A. Offensively, I thought the 300 average in a small sample size was not indicative of the at bats that he put together because clearly the postseason he was overmatched. I gave him a C in total. Or maybe a C minus defensively, offensively. And when you put those two together, you get a 2.8 GPA, which is a B minus. And that's why I'm going with Johan Rojas B minus this year because the defense is going to save you. It's going to save you a lot. Like I forgot to do this because I should probably be doing my job instead of Googling stuff. He was 6th in Major League Baseball in defensive runs saved.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
He played
gonna,
like 12 games.
He's going to bust
Insane.
all defensive
Insane.
metrics for outfielders.
He would have gotten A+ for me if I was just grading his defensive side.
So I give him a B minus. I think that there's clearly room for improvement offensively. If he is even average at the plate in 2024, he can be an everyday center fielder.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's where Dave Dorr is saying, too bad there's not a designated fielder. I'm with you on that because he'd be a perfect for that. And Eugene Krabs actually makes a great point and actually a very
I
perfect
didn't
baseball
realize
point.
that. That's terrifying.
His on-base percentage was higher than Casty in the NLCS. That is crazy. I mean, like you're talking about Jamie, Chrissy said the same thing. He swung out just like everybody else in the lineup, but still was able to contribute a little bit more. But just, yeah, solid C+. Martian Lynch is wanting a Zulli cam, Tyler. They want to see Trey's brother, Tyler Zulli.
I don't know if you need that.
Martian also says that he hates that you have a Mean Girls reference in the chamber.
Mean Girls is a good movie. Come on.
He had that dialed up in the chamber
It's
for
not
sure.
a bad movie, but I couldn't quote it.
I probably could give you more than I'd like to admit, but listen.
Upper
it's-
Darby's finest, Tina Fey, man.
a good movie.
Proud of her.
It's a
No,
really
it is.
good
It is
movie.
funny. I think I've only seen it like
Do you
maybe
what day
once.
is it? Tyler, what day is it?
I thought on Wednesdays we wear pink. I know that one, but I don't know which one you're going at.
Okay.
Girl. What's the rest of that? What day is it?
It's October 4th or October 5th. It's like when never mind. It's a big Moving on. Your girl thing, I was like, that threw me off.
I was saying you to him, like, girl, you don't know you can't finish my quote. Come on. You know,
Oh yeah.
Mean Girls
Oh
and your
yeah.
Mean
Oh, we're
Girls.
being mean girls.
Yeah.
Okay. Which mean
I
girl
don't
would
know.
you be?
I don't know.
Are you like
Was it Lindsay Lohan?
Regina George? Are you like the
No, Jamie's the guy that stands in the auditorium and just yells, "She doesn't even go here."
That is funny. I know that scene. That is a good one.
there you go.
Yeah.
I think I'd be more of the Lindsay Lohan in that movie.
Yeah, we'll work on the Zulli cam, Martian. We will work on the Zulli cam for sure. Let's get to the next guy, which is Christian Pache. Come on down. Considering you gave up next to nothing for him, and this was a guy that came from the Braves organization, and a lot of people there called him, the next Andrew Jones, and there was all the hype in the world for this kid. They gave him away for next to nothing to the Athletics, and the Athletics confusingly gave him away for next to nothing when he was 22 or 23. Like, they gave him away for nothing. And the Athletics are the exact type of organization that should be giving these types of kids high pedigree, extremely young still, every opportunity in the world. And they moved on from him. And I thought it was a brilliant move by Dave Dombrowski to bring him in, get him in the system. Kevin Long, everybody raves about as the hitting coach, and see if you can work with him to improve offensively. He's the same thing as Rojas, like spectacular defense, needs to take some strides offensively. But because the bar was kind of so low for him, and I didn't expect anything outside of just good defense, I thought he improved offensively in every way. He, kind of had a little bit of an offensive resurgence. Now, that resurgence isn't great, so I'm kind of basing it on expectations versus himself, and I thought he improved in every way. So I gave Christian Pache an A. I don't think I'm not comfortable with him being an everyday outfielder yet, but if he's a guy that ends up playing, 45 or 50 games for you, I think he has a chance to work himself into that everyday outfielder. I don't want to give him the job and run, but I gave him an A because when you compared him to the rest of Christian Pache, like he improved a lot once he got here. So I was very happy with what Christian Pache gave you and what you gave up to get him, which was nothing.
Yeah. I mean, I think Christian Pache is a unique character for the Phillies because he just is a great role player. Like that's who he is on this team. He can fill into different spots. He can be a pinch hitter if you need to. And I thought it's a shame he didn't have a full healthy season. You see just 44 games played. And then his 84 at bats was decent, 11 RBIs, a pair of home runs. That's not really what we expect from him in general, as you talk about, to be a guy that's going to give you strong at-bats. But I think his ability to play center field or right field, wherever, is useful. So I'm interested just to see what he's going to look like next season. I always say for some guys, they need that full off season, full spring training, full time with the team to see how they really can come into their own. So I give him a B-.
You're right there with Dave in the chat.
Yeah, Dave, we're here.
Says to give me a drug test.
Yeah, because he's Miss Honey from Matilda, and he's always giving some very great.
I'm not comparing him to every other major league center fielder. I'm comparing him to himself.
Bingo.
Which was on the verge of not being a major league player. Like he saved himself. He saved his career in a way this year.
Yeah, and that's the thing. You are giving based off of previous performance progress.
I'm basing
growth.
it on themselves. Yes.
I'm grading based on across the spectrum, performance, clutchness, statistics, like looking at everybody as a whole.
Like if I compare Christian Pache to Mike Trout, then he's like an F, a healthy Mike Trout. I can't do that. I'm comparing him to himself and the strides they take in their own personal career. Baseball's that weird team sport that's super hyper individualized. So I compare guys to expectations and their back of the baseball card. And the back of the baseball card for Christian Pache before this year was like a D-. I thought he saved his career this year and is probably going to have I don't want to say a super long career, but he's going to be in the major leagues for a long time now.
Yeah.
Whereas if he had another year or two of underperforming and not showing up, then I think he's out of baseball in like 3 or 4 years.
And I think that when you look at Pache in the later part of the regular season, the games he got in for the postseason, I thought he was solid. That's why really I give him a B-. I think he just there were some plays where I remember, Pache, he just made some great fielding plays, but also even his at-bats were decent in the postseason. So B- for me, because I definitely feel like he, without a doubt, has just been steady as a role player. And unlike what we got from Jake Cave, he's someone that did add a little bit here and there. He didn't hurt you. He would just add every once in a while, an RBI in the postseason, making a great catch, making a great play. So I think that's why I'm on the B- side. Tyler, what do you have?
Tyler, what do you got?
More Miss Honey or Professor Wash?
So I had a teacher in high school once that used to joke that instead of grading our test, he would just take the stack of papers and throw them down the steps. And whichever one landed the farthest got the best grade, and then everything worked its way backwards. And knowing the fact that he didn't last more than a year at school, I'm starting to think that maybe it was true. That's Jamie as a grader. He's just throwing papers down the steps and see what happens.
I mean, the guy stunk before this.
I
think he improved everything.
I don't disagree with you. I don't think Christian Pache could hit off a tee up until this past season. And if you look at the numbers pre that meniscus injury, he was hitting 360 in April, and I don't think he ever fully recovered because of that. And then he had the elbow right after that. Was limited to 48 games. I'm not sure he would have played a ton more in the regular season.
Probably not.
But the 238 batting average, I think, is probably lower than it probably could have been, I think,
Agreed.
if he'd have been given a little bit more of an opportunity to play without the injuries. He's a good fourth outfielder. I don't think he's ever going to be a starter for this team. But I do think that he is good enough to give you a consistent baseline level defense. So, like, Rojas is a much better defender than him, which is not a knock on Pache. He's a really, really good defender. But Rojas is going to be an elite defender. Mm-hmm. But Pache's a better hitter than Rojas is, so they kind of balance out. If I gave Rojas a B-, I'm going to take a small step backwards. Christian Pache gets a C+ from me. And it's not a knock on him. It's more just an indictment on his numbers and the fact that he didn't play very much.
Yeah, that's a great point. And I like the fact that we each have something a little bit different that we're basing it off of. But one thing that is always consistent and always the same, that's a Game Time app. They've got great prices, great discounted rates that you can be able to go to a concert, a game. If you're looking last minute to buy some tickets, it's the Game Time app. And you can also see your seat on the Game Time app, which makes it that much better because you can have an idea of where you and your buddies will be snacking on popcorn, throwing back some beer and drinks, and watching your favorite artists perform or favorite teams play. So go over to the Game Time app, use that code PHLY. It's on your screen for those of you watching on YouTube. For anybody tuning in on our podcast platforms, it's a PHLY Phillies podcast. Again, the code is PHLY to get $20 off of your purchase when you use the Game Time app. And thank you to those of you that are tuned in on our podcast platforms because we love to have you here too. Even though you don't get to join in on the fun live, make sure you're commenting with your picks, thoughts, grades, wherever you are watching the show.
Eugene Krabs says we need to combine Pache and Rojas into one person.
I wish we could do that.
They are the same thing where it's like great defense, poor offense. I don't know how many of those guys you can afford to have. The outfield position is a unique one, I think, this offseason because you want improvements, but I don't really know where they come. I wonder if Brandon Marsh is going to be somebody they dangle out in trades. We'll get into that stuff more next week.
Yeah.
But it's kind of a confounding how do you make this better type of thing.
But I think they're good pieces in that
they
add versatility. They add if a situation is needed where you have to maybe make an adjustment. You can slot them in. So I think for role players, they're solid. That's what you want out of a role player. They're going to contribute when called on. But it is a very weird, when you're looking at as we're getting into the offseason more, a weird situation that the Phillies are in of what to do next.
All right, so the two guys remaining are the big money guys here in the outfield. Let's go with Nick Castellanos next.
What about Marsh?
Oh, I forgot about Marsh. Brandon Marsh. Right. I thought we...
Let's Marsh it up first.
Yeah, I'm going to get called Mrs. Honey again.
You are.
I think he improved a lot from where he was in Anaheim. So I gave him an A-. I don't think Brandon Marsh... I don't want him being my everyday left fielder, but it looks like that's where he's going to be. Ideally, I'd want more power out of my left fielder, but his defense is pretty good. I think he plays a better left than he does a center. But comparing him to himself, I think he took a lot of strides this year. I think he's another guy like Pache that has improved under Kevin Long. So I gave him an A-. I'm not in love with it. Maybe I could go B+. But I think he's generally in that area because he improved. What do you got?
Not an A-, that's for sure. Okay, so a little different than Miss Honey over here to my left. I like Brandon Marsh. I think he's a great clubhouse guy. I think he's always one that you see bringing the energy, dancing, brings the vibes, fills in where needed. And this year, 2.77 average with 12 home runs, so 60 RBIs. Postseason, honestly, was one of the guys for the Phillies that performed well in the NLCS, and there weren't many that we could talk about. But I thought that he was someone that in those moments where we found ourselves wondering who is actually playing well for the Phillies, Brandon Marsh was one that was giving you something.
He was the one guy locked in that
this
NLCS.
Postseason, 13 hits. That's way more than a number of people had. 1 home run, 4 RBIs. And I remember the NLCS specifically, he was one that was able to get hits, get good at bats. So for me, Brandon Marsh is just a solid B-. I actually have him in the same exact spot as Christian Pache. I think Brandon Marsh is a guy that has a good amount of, just aspects he adds to the team that's needed for, again, a solid role player. But he's not someone that I would rate as highly as, anything up above a B-, just because of the fact that for as great as he is at times, he can also do some pretty rough, boneheaded types things where it's just like, Brandon Marsh. So he's the later part of the postseason swung me, and I agree. I know somebody earlier was saying the final series definitely gave us a bad taste in our mouths and absolutely had us grading some guys lower. That's because it's the most important series of the season. Those are the most important games of the season. Those are the must-win at that point.
I did season-long
and
grades.
So I did season-long as well.
Bias,
but I also, like I mentioned, absolutely looked at the postseason with a bigger magnifying glass because that's what's more important than the regular season. So for Marsh, I think his postseason actually helped him out because there were times in the regular season that Marsh was not as good. So
all right, Tyler, what do you got here?
Marsh had a weird year. Really weird year in the fact that his April was stellar. His May was historically bad. And the rest of the year, he was pretty good other than September where he hit 200 in the regular season. Marsh's year was weird because of the fact that for a bulk of it, you didn't feel comfortable with him against left-handed pitching, and you can tell by that third stat where he only had 22 hits against against left-handed pitching. He hit 292 against righties, 229 against lefties, but then you bring in the 13 for 40 in the DS and CS. He was really good in the postseason. He stepped up when it mattered. And I think that you've got solid defense, right? It's not Rojas and Pache level, but it's not bad either. It's like B-level defense, which if he's going to be my left fielder and one of those two guys are my center fielder at A+ or A- level defense, I'm super content. Brandon Marsh is a guy that I think is a buildable player on this team, unless they decide to make a move, and he's.
I think
part
he's
of the
a
trade.
great
an
trade.
intriguing trade
Definitely
prospect.
a great trade prospect.
If they're looking to
They've
make
upped
a move,
his stock here in Philadelphia.
correct.
Yeah.
Especially if you're thinking about that team that we're going to talk about later that apparently has no money. They're going to want a major league ready player.
Yeah.
He would be the guy.
Yeah, exactly.
That's
He's
a good
that type
point.
of
And I
guy.
know in the chat you guys are making some good points. Night Train's agreeing with me. Marsh is a B-. I know Marshall Lynch was asking who Miss Honey is. It is Jamie that I'm referring to. I love that Eugene Krabs came in with the full-on Google definition of Miss Jennifer Honey as the protagonist of the novel Matilda and the deuteragonist of the 1996 film adaptation. I think Eugene Krabs is low-key like Ryan Gosling or someone really cool, but he could be also a therapist. That's all I'm going to leave at that.
Well, you know what else is really cool? Wheelhouse Cards. Wheelhouse Cards is one of our partners here at PHLY, and it's our go-to sports card, gift, and apparel shop in the Delaware Valley. They have 2 locations in Wayne and Westchester. Our social media maven Chris was out there a little while ago. I know Zach Berman's at the Wayne location all the time with his son because it's his favorite store. Their motto is cards and community because of the love of sports unites us all. Look at us all hanging out and having a great Thursday.
United.
Because of sports. It does unite us all. They carry all your favorite card brands like Topps Chrome Baseball and Mosaic Football, as well as T-shirts, hats, and hoodies from all the major brands that you love, like Mitchell & Ness, 47 brand, Junk Food, Starter, and one of my favorites, Shibe Vintage Sports. If you're looking to grade your sports card collection, Wheelhouse offers PSA grading submissions. They also host tons of different family-friendly events and birthday parties every month. I wish I was a little kid again, could go have a birthday party at a card shop because that was like my dream. So stop into either of the locations at Wayne or Westchester. Open 7 days per week at 11 a.m. Use code PHLY and get $10 off any purchase of $25 or more in store. Also, be sure to give them a follow on Instagram at Wheelhouse Cards. So check that out. Wheelhouse is awesome. Encourage all of you. All right, now it's to the big money guys.
Yeah, big money, big money.
The Kyle Schwarbers and Nick Castellanoses of the world. Kyle Schwarber's I'm really interested in. Nick Castellanos, you call me Miss Honey all you want. I know he came up small. He also killed the Marlins and the Braves and was up there in baseball history for smashing home runs. I won't hold his what was it, 1 for 38 in the NLCS too hard against him here because he did set a career high in RBIs. He set a second career high, or came in second for career high in home runs. His batting average improved from last year. His on base improved from last year. I thought his defense improved since last year. I thought he gave you at times better at bats, and then at other times would revert back to swinging at everything low and outside. I'm giving Nick Castellanos for the year in its entirety an A. I thought he was really, really good this year.
Would you like some tea with that, honey? Okay, an A is interesting. So I had a lot of the same notes as you about the increases in a number of Nick's statistical areas. So something that jumped out at me is before Nick was moved and dropped 4 spots in the batting order from cleanup to 8th, his stats in the 270 plate appearances prior to being moved were a 218, 252, 300 split with 3 homers. And Nick did not have a great year. It's very up and down, actually. Even prior to the All-Star break, he had a good stretch prior, but it was like meh. It was very up and down. And then, of course, you look at the fact he made history hitting back-to-back multi-home runs in the NLDS and then turns on the NLCS, as you mentioned, 1 hit in all 7 games. You can't have that from your big money guy. Nick Castellanos, to me, definitely not an A or in the A range. I give him a B. Might be a little harsh.
Man.
Might be a little harsh, but
a little.
It was very up and down. Nick Castellanos did not have a great year, in my opinion.
He was 1 or 2 All-Stars and improved in every offensive category and defensively.
He had a great start to the season, and then after the All-Star break, hit a rut. And once he got moved in the batting order, it seemed like he kind of regained some of that same early season mojo. But Nick Castellanos, in my opinion, and I'm a huge Nick Castellanos fan.
Apparently
Some
not.
may say he's my ex-boyfriend. He's not. But Nick Castellanos, to me, I expected more from him. He underperformed. He was frustrating at times. So it's a B.
All right,
Solid
Tyler,
B for got to
what do
be
you
better.
got? Break the harshness of Miss Honey and the hardest grader in the world over here.
Yeah, this was one of his better statistical seasons. And quite frankly, when the season ended last year, I said one of 2 things happens. Either he gets better or he can't hit anymore. And I felt that the latter was a little bit hyperbolic, but it was a really rough season for him. He was statistically better in every single offensive category. Raised his average, his OBP, his slugging, the home runs, the RBIs. Obviously one of the 2 Phillies All-Stars this year, along with Craig Kimbrel. That doesn't buy me a whole lot, but I do think the first half was stellar. The second half was a little bit more down to earth, but it was overall a really, really good campaign from Nick Castellanos. And yes, the 1 for 38 knocks him a little bit.
It's brutal.
I'm gonna give him a B+, and it would be in the A's if it weren't for that NLCS.
Okay, fair enough.
Well, that's interesting. A B+. Okay.
Night Train says great time to trade him. I think he could be on the table in some discussions. Yeah. The money aspect and the 2 years and $50 million. Do you have to give something with Nick Castellanos to unload him? It's something I'm not closing the conversation on. I'll say that. I don't know if it's something they're looking to do, but I don't think it's also something that they wouldn't do.
Yeah, he is very streaky, as Eugene Krabs is saying. Barber was also agreeing it was his best season of his career. Can he match it again? Not sure. Yeah, not sure at all. But one thing I am sure about is FOCO, because they've got some great merchandise, apparel, collectibles, bobbleheads that you can be rocking to represent your favorite squads. God bless you, Tyler. And at FOCO, you can use the code PHLY for 10% off. Get a nice discount as you get out there and buy. Are we back to buying the overall? Sure, let's do it. If you're
got
back to buying,
a lot of compliments on him on Halloween.
Yeah, if you want to buy some stuff to hang on your walls, or t-shirts, hats, whatever it is, shoes. They've even got some great sports shoes that you can wear, like Eagle slippers and things like that. So yeah, without a doubt, head over to FOCO, use that code PHLY, get 10% off, and be able to represent your squad.
All right, now I think this is the most interesting one. Kyle Schwarber. So the way I do it is I put down my gut grade, and then I go dive into the baseball reference page and kind of like look at how they fared, career numbers versus last year, improvement, all that. It's really hard for me to give somebody an A that batted 197, but I did it. I moved him up to an A- from my gut of a B+. And I know, Tyler, I don't think it's his fault that he bats leadoff. I would enjoy Kyle Schwarber so much more if he was batting 4th for this team. But that's not the conversation we're having. His power numbers are through the roof. 47 home runs, 104 RBIs. It's his career high in RBIs. It's his career high in home runs. He is a power hitter. He's really good at what he does. He took a lot of walks this year, up almost exactly 40 on the nose from the year before. So is that a trade-off to the average? Kinda. I still think hits are more valuable than walks, and I know that's a discussion that a lot of people get into. I give him an A-. I can't go A or A+ when you're hitting 197. So, Renee, what do you got?
Not an A again. Listen, Kyle was one of 4 Phillies that was named to be a finalist for the Silver Slugger Award, along with Bryce Harper, JT, and Trey. That's about all the positives I got for Kyle right now. Just kidding. It's not that bad. Yeah, his numbers are higher because it's also the most games that Kyle Schwarber's ever played in his career. So there should be an increase in RBIs, home runs at 47, 104 for RBIs, batting average. It talked about that 197 on base percentage of 343. But Kyle Schwarber, to me, you want to talk streaky. He was so up and down. and all over the place. And he actually was one that performed better in the NLCS, which is wild because he hadn't been doing well in the postseason games prior to that. But I'm not gonna go as high as an A. 17 strikeouts this postseason, had 6 RBIs, 5 home runs, finished with 12 hits, and I'm gonna go for Kyle Schwarber just to keep it simple. I actually don't even know what I have for him. Oh, a B+.
Okay,
I mean, it's
that's
not
where
terrible.
I was originally.
Yeah,
and MBD says an 817 OPS for a guy with 47 home runs is not great.
No,
Yeah,
he should be doing so much more.
I agree. Tyler, what do you got?
Yeah, he's getting an A- for me because this is exactly what I expected Kyle Schwarber to be. He's going to hit below the Mendoza line. He's going to hit 40-plus home runs, and he's going to lead the league in strikeouts. And this is the guy I expected him to be from the get-go. The fact that they can get him out of left field for as long as possible, if he could never play left field again, then I think that there's value. It's his career. He had a career high in walks. He was top 20 in slugging, despite the fact that he had that low OPS. I am happy with the performance that Kyle Schwarber gave you, and I get the fact that people don't love him hitting leadoff. It is what it is.
It is.
I'm giving him an A- because he was exactly what I expected him to be.
Yeah, and that's why I gave him the A- too.
Yeah.
You can't lead the league in home runs and me really roast you too hard. So that's it for us today here on the PHLY Phillies podcast. Tomorrow we'll talk about the broke boys, San Diego Padres. We'll talk about the conclusion of the MLB regular season and look a little ahead to Monday's looming free agency out there.
Plus our final grades.
Yeah,
You've got to
and
get into
plus
the management in front
the
office.
grades for Rob Thompson. I guess we'll throw Caleb Cotham and Kevin Long in there, and of course Dave Dombrowski in the front office. So we will see you tomorrow at 12:30. We thank each and every one of you. Mopar, you're getting in here right as we're signing off, brother. But we love all of you. We appreciate you. Thanks for hanging out with us this afternoon. We will be back tomorrow here on the PHLY Phillies podcast.
See ya.
We all silly like the mayor.